I don't think there's a study out there that shows that by physically beating these kids, physically beating children, improves their sense of awareness or improves their sense of behavior. Hey guys, welcome to another classic episode of 18th Avenue Podcast. So this section of the podcast is a little different from what I would typically do, say on Wednesdays. On Wednesdays, release the full episodes. This one here, it's just there's so much coming up in the news, in the city I live in, around the world, just so much, and it's super hard to keep up with. And what I found recently is that waiting till like Wednesday to release the podcast, once it does come up, like the news is already like a week old, and besides it's already out there. So I want to be a little bit more proactive in my approach by basically being able to release these little tiny news that I find very interesting, that I feel like you might benefit from it, that can open a conversation for everybody to be able to contribute their thoughts and what to think. So today is no different. This will be the first time we're doing this, and of course, always also expect to have the regular podcast which air every Wednesday. So without further ado, let's get into this news that came out today. And I'm actually holding my device here, so I will be holding them because it just came out, and I just really, because it touched my heart. It just reminded me so much of the things that the sort of backward ideas that we have. So a Calgary man was found guilty for second-degree murder in the death of his daughter. Now, let me talk about this. So here's the backstory. So back in 2014, a Nigerian man, the family name is OLUWAFEMI, and the daughter that was murdered, her name is REBEKAH. So she's a little girl. At the time, 3 hours before her murder, a furnace salesman by the name of John Howie had visited the family in the Aaronswood home. And whilst there, he noticed the little girl was sitting there and reciting her ABC and whatnot. So he had done business with the father and then took off and left. 3 hours later, a 911 call is called to their home, and when they get there, the little girl is in cardiac arrest. She was unresponsive when they got to the hospital. Unfortunately, she didn't make it. A few things here. Now, people say you don't have kids and whatnot, but here is the problem. One of the things that they discovered was that he beat her. And he beat her basically to death. I think it's an unfortunate situation because by no means do I think that he is a bad father. I don't think that that is something he wanted to do. I think if he had the opportunity to foresee what would have happened, how bad the situation would have went, he probably would not have proceeded to beating his daughter. His little daughter. So now, a lot wasn't said about the mother here, so you wouldn't really hear me speak on the mother so much. I don't even think I cut her name in this entire article. They just mentioned the school and different things like that. They had noticed she wasn't in school for some time, and so they got curious to find out what was going on. But here is what I want to say. Parents, uncles, whoever you are, wherever you are, look, first of all, just stop beating these kids. To me, the whole idea of beating children at that age really made no sense to me. And it still makes absolutely zero sense to me now. I remember from my own story, I was growing up, I would be punished all the time. I'd be beat. Like, I got beat up so much, not by my peers, but by like my older brother. Like, they were disciplining me. I mean, they called it discipline, but really it was just like they're just wailing on you every few minutes. But one of the things I realized, I remember just looking at the person that was disciplining me at that time. And I eventually just told them, like, hey, listen, you can beat me all you want, but the truth is, I'm not going to change until I'm ready to change. And I was a stubborn kid. Now, I wasn't a rude kid or anything like that. Like, I didn't cuss people out. Especially older people, I didn't do that. I wasn't rude, but I was extremely stubborn. You couldn't punish me enough for something that I've done, just to realize that once you punish me for it, I will go right back to this very thing I just did and do it again and again and again. And you will punish me again and again and again. But I don't think there's a study out there that shows that by physically beating these kids, physically beating children, improves their sense of awareness or improves their sense of behaviors. You have to remember that these kids are not prisoners of war. This is what to do to prisoners of war. If you capture the enemy, then you want information out of the enemy. But what possible information could you want out of your own child? I know what you're going to say. This is how it's been. This is how you grew up, and I get it. I grew up like that too. I would talk more about my whole beating story. It's freaking crazy. But just because you grew up like that, that's the way things were back then. We didn't know any different. Back then, we were so wrong about so many things. We were wrong about a whole lot of shit. And even today, we're discovering that we were wrong about a whole lot of things that we were doing then. And we'll continue to do those things in today's society. And we shouldn't. These ideas should be left back there and be left back in history. I understand that's the way you grew up. That's the way your parents grew up. That's the way to put fear in you. That's the way you got to respect your parents. But let's be honest. You beating want to make you resent the person who's beating you. It doesn't make you love them more, especially with kids. When they're at that age, they're like 5, they're 6, they're just a handful to deal with. It's like you can't deal with them enough. But there are other ways, like my nephews, they come here all the time. And I would never beat my nephews. Never, ever beat. I wouldn't even beat my own kid. Well, I don't have any. But if I did, and when I do, I'm not going to beat them. Why beat them? You know, one of the things that I remember from my childhood memory was that it wasn't the beating that got me. Oh, the beating meant nothing to me, because imagine you beat somebody and then they turn around and go and do the same thing over. Like, it just wasn't working. But there was one thing I was passionate about. I was passionate about football. I love football so much. I couldn't wait. I would wake up in the morning. I wake my friends up. I couldn't wait to see who was going on the field. Before my friends came on the field, I was already on there. I was there. I was there already. I have a ball. I have something going on. I'm playing by myself. And then people came. Then we played together. I would play from morning to night. You know, that's how amazingly interested I was in that. Now, there was few time I was disciplined. Except this time, they didn't beat me. Nobody beat me. You know what they did? They told me I couldn't go out to play. Oh, my God. That was the worst. That was the worst form of discipline for me. That thing felt like somebody literally had taken a hot iron and pressed it against my heart. That's how bad it felt. It was so, I mean, that was the worst for me. And I know if it could work for me then, it can work for kids today. And I know that kids today, when they're not going outside to play with their peers anymore, so you can't get them on that because nobody want to go outside. It's too dangerous, apparently. But what do they have? They have these devices. And what do the device have on them? They have apps. And what do the apps have on them? They have games. They have a load of games. Whether it's Angry Bird, my nephew, when they come here, they like to play all kinds of games. Some of the games, I don't even know them. They just always want to be on it. So if they misbehave, they don't want to listen to their uncle, I simply take the device away from them. And I tell them to go in the room and go lie down. Let them go and reflect on their lives and they hate that. I think it's the worst thing you could do to a kid. It's the worst thing you could do to a child is to take something that's they're genuinely interested in and deprive them of that. I think that is a better form of discipline than beating the kids. Now, I know that this father probably didn't mean to beat his child. I mean, he meant to beat her, but not to the point of death. No father want to beat the kid to the point of death. And this is not the issue of a Nigerian issue. It just happens. People are going to say, oh, yeah, well, that's what they do in Africa. No, but that's not the point. See, if that's how you think, then you're missing the whole point of what I'm trying to get across here. You are missing this point and it's going right over your head. So let me reiterate myself. It has nothing to do with that. It's just as human beings, there's a certain way we grew up. There's a certain way we grew up, and because it worked for us, we figure that idea must also work for other people. But it shouldn't be like that. Just because it worked for you, there's no guarantee that it'll work for me. So what is my message here? My message is stop beating your kids. Find other ways to discipline these kids, because at the end of the day, whoever the mother is, has lost two family members. One of them never had a chance to experience what it would be like going to school by herself. She never had a chance to experience what it would be like renting her own apartment, buying her own, owning her first car, walking into her first job interview, and actually getting the first job opportunity, working, putting money away, saving. One of them would never have the opportunity to ever have kids again. So I never saw the sense in disciplining these kids. I never saw the idea in beating these kids. I see no value in it. Again, it is one of those things that has to go. Now, for the mother, whom wasn't really mentioned in here, for the mother, I can only imagine what she would be going through. So this happened back in 2014. So she had to deal with that grievance. She had to deal with it then. She dealt with it. The passing of the daughter. Now, I'm not sure because I'm just getting the news and I wasn't in Calgary at the time, but I'm just getting this news and it was actually today, February 7th, today. So today, she also had to deal with a new grief as well. As if the old one wasn't enough. The verdict was passed today where the husband, was found guilty and is being sentenced to jail for second-degree murder. My point there is stop beating your kids. Communicate with them. You will find your kids want to be around you more. They're not afraid of you. They want to be around you more. Just stop these old ideas. It's not working. It's not working. None of this shit is working. It never worked for your grandfather. We thought it did. It never worked. It never worked. So, don't beat them. Show them love. Show them compassion. Invite them closer to you. Be family again. Anyway, guys, I want to know, what are you guys' thoughts on this particular subject? And what do you do when your kid is misbehaving? How do you discipline them? I think that as a society, we need to talk about it openly so that we can come up with better solution. We already know the old method. We know that's not going to work. So what are ways that you guys are disciplining your kids? How old are your kids? And different things like that. So, and also, what are your thoughts? And make sure to follow the channel. Again, this is 18th Avenue Podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. And we will see you. Make sure to tune in every Wednesday. Every Wednesday, there's be a whole podcast, full episode of podcast there. These are just a little in-between things that I'm giving you guys. Just things that come up. I wouldn't have time to cover this in the full podcast. Anyway, thank you. Again, I'm your host, Rico Bottles. And see you every Wednesday on I Am Rico B on 18th Avenue Podcast. Thank you, guys. Take care. Peace.